Chapter 77, The Real Goods. Renjiro looked at Fujin and said, Fujin, make a couple of shadow clones and a dozen wind clones. Examine the dead bodies, and take anything valuable they have. He tossed a few storage scrolls at Fujin while speaking, store the dead bodies of the ninjas in these scrolls. Fujin nodded and made the clones, who immediately got to work. Renjiro himself made a couple of shadow clones and a few mud clones, who began doing the same in the mud river. He looked at Hoka and Miko and said, you two should learn earth clone jutsu later. Once your chakra reserves grow, learn shadow clone jutsu. Both will be very helpful. Miko and Hoka nodded, yes sensei. While the bandits, valuables, and dead bodies were being cleared, they moved towards the hiding merchants and asked them to come out. The merchants sighed in relief and stopped hiding between their goods and rock shields. However, when they came out, they were shocked looking at the condition of the hills and forest around the area. They were also disturbed by the dead bodies and blood around them. Iha Tojio walked to Renjiro and requested, Renjiro-sama, can we please move away from here soon? Renjiro replied, we need some time to rest. We will move soon. You guys can get ready to move. Hearing that, all the merchants immediately began to prepare to move. Renjiro looked at Hoka and said, take your shirt off. Hoka took his shirt off, and Renjiro disinfected the cut on his chest and wrapped it in bandages. Fujin's clones first checked the ninjas from the first wave. They didn't have anything valuable as all their scrolls were destroyed by Fujin's first attack. Next, they checked and sealed all the genin and Misato. The genins didn't have much. Misato, on the other hand, had a lot of ryo and weapons. Next, they checked the chinins and Tomio. They all had a decent amount of money and weapons. Tomio also had a scroll that listed some water release jutsus and another scroll explaining the mission parameters. Fujin's shadow clone quickly schemed through the water jutsu scroll. However, at the end of it, he was disappointed. I thought I'd get lucky and get some op jutsu. Unfortunately, these all are rather lame. I can probably get them all from the library. Next, he went through the mission scroll, understanding what exactly their mission was. He was surprised. These guys sent 5 teams of similar size to intercept all 5 squads that were sent from Konoha. Aren't they a little too courageous? Also, how the fuck could they enter into the land of fire so easily? And that too without being detected. Fujin sighed at the state of Konoha and land of fire. If all countries have such a weak border force, even I won't have any difficulty in moving around. No wonder the Akatsuki were pretty unobstructed. I thought it was a testimony to their power, but it seems like even a genin wouldn't have much of an issue. In around 10 minutes, Fujin and Renjiro were done. Renjiro's clones were also done cleaning up the bandits and dispersed. Renjiro then sorted all the gains and said, not bad. We got over 1.6 million ryo, 500 shurikens and 100 kunaus. He stored everything in his scroll and said, I'll divide the weapons equally among us. The money, half will be given to the village, remaining will be divided among us in the same way as we divide the mission rewards. Hoka and Miko didn't care about money, so they just nodded. Fujin didn't care much either, but thought, wow. 1.6 million ryo just from one fight? No wonder so many ninjas go rogue. The merchants too heard what Renjiro said. They were shocked. He got so much money just with a few minutes of fighting. We risk our lives traveling from one country to another, and don't even make half that amount. Not to mention, we have to split it between twice the people. They were very envious, but seeing the state of the forest and hill, they didn't have a single evil thought in them. While resting, Team Renjiro ate a few ration bars. Fujin wondered while eating, since it's so easy to get money, and since there are so many rogue ninjas trying to earn money, should I form an organization similar to Akatsuki? But for the sole purpose of earning money. He kept analyzing the viability, advantages, and disadvantages of the idea he had. Around the same time, Team Renjiro was attacked, all the other 4 teams were attacked as well. The force that attacked the Umbus was the strongest. However, they also got annihilated the quickest. Of the 3 Chunin squads, 1 managed to defeat their enemy. The remaining 2 caused a lot of damage to their enemy and retreated safely. They would later coordinate with Konoha forces placed on the borders of the Land of Fire and exterminate those forces by multiple ambushes. The Wagarashi family, which sent many of their high-level ninjas and spent a fortune on hiring rogue ninjas, would never imagine that each and every ninja they sent would end up dead. They had another strong force assembled in the Land of T to ambush if their initial assault failed. However, after getting no reports from 2 attack forces and getting reports of defeat from the other 3, they cancelled all their plans and disbanded the force they raised. Their plans for dominating the Land of T would come to a halt for years. Team Renjiro completed its mission with no further incidents. After reaching Digarashi port, Toshio carried the goods into Wasabi property. There, Renjiro and Toshio met with the Wasabi family head. They removed a huge cubical wooden box that was hidden in between the goods. On placing the box on the ground, Renjiro made a hand seal and said, "Release immediately." Multiple seals appeared on the box and began unsealing themselves. Renjiro opened the box. Inside, Wasabi Daichi was sleeping. He opened his eyes as soon as Renjiro opened the box. If Fujin, Miko, and Hoka saw this, they'd be very shocked. Neither of the 3 ever noticed someone to be hidden inside the goods. Renjiro thought about his discussion with the 3rd Hokage. Hokage office, 16 days ago. Hiruzen looked at Daichi and stated, "Daichi, escorting you normally wouldn't be possible with just 1 squad. So we will be sealing you and transporting you along with other goods of merchants." Daichi thought for a bit and asked, "The trip to Digarashi port will take more than 2 weeks. So how will I be sealed?" Hiruzen answered, "We will seal you inside a box. Inside it, we will inscribe seals that'll ensure a fresh supply of air to you. It'll also make you undetectable by any means. Your water and food will be stored inside scrolls, with enough to last a month. As for your excretions, you'll have to do that inside storage scrolls as well." Hearing that, Daichi frowned. He asked, "Is it necessary to do all this? Can't I just disguise as one of the merchants and join them?" Renjiro shook his head, "No. Your chakra level is higher than a normal civilian. Any sensor would be able to detect you with ease. If detected, all the enemy forces will attack us only. I can't guarantee your safety if that happens." Daichi sighed and put forth a couple more ideas. But Renjiro stated the flaws in them. Reluctantly, he agreed. Wasabi family mansion. Daichi finally saw sunlight after over 2 weeks. He tried getting up, but his legs trembled. Renjiro grabbed him, got him out of the box, and said, "You have barely moved for over 2 weeks. You'll need some time and might need to do some exercises before you can move properly." Daichi sighed on hearing that. The Wasabi family had just laughed and patted his back, "Don't worry. At least you are alive." He then bowed to Renjiro and said, "Renjiro-san, thank you for resolving our issues. With the losses that the Wagarashi family took, they won't try anything for a few years at least." Renjiro nodded and replied, "I can't comment on the internal politics in the Land of T, but you should take this opportunity to suppress them completely." The Wasabi family had nodded. He paid Renjiro for the real mission and invited Renjiro and Toshio to stay as guests in his mansion. They both agreed. The next day, Team Renjiro began returning back to Konoha. They traveled at a very fast speed and returned back to Konoha by midnight. Renjiro dismissed the team and gave them a week's break. Chapter 78, The Chunin Exams. The Hokage Office. The next morning, Renjiro met up with Hiruzen to report the mission. After the discussions were done, Hiruzen asked Renjiro, "The next Chunin exam will start soon. Do you plan on nominating the Genins?" Renjiro nodded, "Yes. They are quite strong. Becoming Chunins shouldn't be an issue to them. Their teamwork is good as well. They were able to kill an elite Chunin during the mission with ease, though he was handicapped by the terrain." Hiruzen nodded, "Yes, that's good progress." He suddenly sighed, "I had selected quite a few Genins and gave them to capable Jounins so that they can be trained quickly. I plan to keep track of all of them, but unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to follow up on them." Renjiro didn't respond. After all, he was well aware of how busy the Hokage was. Hiruzen asked, "Can you tell me the current power of the Genins and their future prospects?" Renjiro nodded, "Sure, old man. As I said, all three are very strong. Hoka is still obsessed with Hyuga's gentle fist style. But he has learned quite a few jutsus to help him fight at mid-range. He has learned a few earth and water release jutsus. Once the Hyuga family begins training him seriously, he will have no issue becoming a special Jounin in a few years. Even becoming a Jounin should be doable for him. As for elite Jounin, it's too soon to comment. As for weaknesses, Hoka still prefers Taijutsu a lot. So it creates a few vulnerabilities for him. He'll need a few rank B missions to iron out that flaw. He does have a decent amount of chakra reserves. So learning a few rank B jutsus should aid him a lot." Hiruzen nodded and replied, "Nice. As for the weakness, almost all Hyuga share it." He sighed before continuing, "They are obsessed with their gentle fist." Renjiro nodded. "Very few Hyuga ninjas choose to learn non-Hyuga jutsus." Hiruzen continued, "Once he becomes a Chunin, I'll have him join multiple B-rank missions." "What about the other two?" Renjiro began talking about Miko. "Miko is well balanced. She is good at ninjutsu, genjutsu as well as taijutsu. And like all Uchiha, she is good with shurikens and wires. Just having the Sharingan makes her strong. Like all Uchiha, she has a strong affinity to fire release and can also use earth release jutsus for defense. She shouldn't have any issue becoming a Jounin once her chakra reserves grow. Elite Jounin too might be attainable for her. But I can't comment much on it right now. As for her weaknesses, she doesn't have any in terms of her technique. But she is very impulsive. And she is very arrogant. In the last 8 months, her arrogance has decreased considerably, but it's still there nonetheless." Hiruzen nodded, "Yes, the Sharingan does boost their confidence a lot." While saying, he sighed internally, the differences between Uchiha and the village are increasing day by day. I hope they calm down and let this old man live in peace. Renjiro continued, "Lastly Fujin. Surprisingly, his growth has been the fastest in his team. He has become a very capable sensor. If we consider just that aspect, he is already as good as Jounin rank sensors. His chakra reserves are already at the Jounin level. He has learned samurai saber techniques and is very good with wind release. He has also learned Senju Taijutsu style and has very good chakra control. He can also supercharge wind jutsus with ease. He also learned earth release jutsus for defense." Hiruzen's eyebrows rose when he heard that Fujin had learned Senju Taijutsu style. This was something he didn't expect. He wondered, does Fujin have Senju or Uzumaki ancestry? Renjiro continued, also, he is very fast, and can perform body flicker and wind instantaneous body jutsu without any seals. In fact, the way he operates is quite similar to our Umbu. I'd recommend you recruit him into Umbu. In fact, I'd recommend you to break the tradition and not wait till he turns 13 to recruit him. Regarding his future prospects, I'm confident that he'll become a jounin at the very least. Likely even become an elite jounin. I'd recommend you give him wind vacuum style jutsus when you think he is ready. It will make him much more lethal. As for his weaknesses, he is way too careful. Even during spars. So he has no experience whatsoever in fighting in crunch situations. And while his behavior might not show any arrogance, Fujin is very arrogant. Likely even more than Miko and Hoka. And he probably doesn't even recognize his arrogance. Fortunately, it doesn't affect him during battle. Hiruzen laughed lightly on hearing that, they are geniuses and young. Even you were quite arrogant when you were young. Renjiro just sighed seeing that Hiruzen was teasing him. Hiruzen continued in a slightly more serious tone, I'm surprised that you have such high hopes for him. And the fact that his chakra reserves grew this quickly and about him learning Senju Taijutsu style. Hiruzen thought for a moment and said, I'll keep an eye on him once he becomes a Chunin. I'll consider your recommendation to recruit him into Umbu as well. Renjiro nodded. Hiruzen continued, anyways, you have done a great job with the kids. Now ensure that they captivate the daimyos in the exam. Renjiro replied, all right. He discussed some more matters with Hiruzen, before leaving. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko took a week's break, resting and reflecting on their performance. Fujin analyzed his performance and concluded, there isn't anything I'd do differently. The mission kinda went way too well, to be honest. The only issue I could consider is that I didn't fight any Chunin level ninja head on. But again, there wasn't really any opportunity to do so. And forcing it to happen would have been idiotic. That said, I did have a few good ideas to improve my wind element further and make my fighting style even more lethal. But, I will probably need to learn mystical palm jutsu first. Or have a medical ninja with me. Even that might not be safe enough. I may need to make some protective gear as well. Oh well, I'll try those ideas later. Not finding anything to improve, Fujin just trained by himself for 7 days. In the following week, Renjiro once again put his students through a gruesome training session. Finally, on one fine day, Renjiro assembled the team after training was done. And he handed them 3 forms. The kids took it and observed. They were instantly excited. Renjiro said, I have nominated you all to the Chunin exams. If you are all willing to participate, fill in the forms and give them to me tomorrow. The genins immediately said, thank you sensei. Renjiro's face softened. He smiled and dismissed the team. When everyone left, he sighed while smiling, I have grown attached to these kids. I couldn't even tell them that this was their last training session with me as a team. He then looked up at the sky, his smile dying down and a serious and rather grim expression appearing on his face, I hope that their fates are different than their seniors. The next day, all 3 submitted their application to participate in the Chunin exams. The first exam will be a return test, which will be conducted a week later. Renjiro gave the entire week off to the genins. The genins hence did their own training, while meeting every afternoon, for brainstorming more ideas regarding combination jutsus and teamwork. Chapter 79, The Chunin Exams, First Phase. A week later, Fujin, Hoka, and Miko met in front of the academy building. Fujin looked at them and asked, "Prepared, guys?" Both Hoka and Miko smirked and replied, "Of course." The trio went into the building together. The first phase was held in room 301. Fujin wondered, will someone cast a genjutsu on the second floor? However, there was no commotion on the second floor. They entered 301 without any issue. On entering the room, they saw hundreds of other genins there. Hoka and Miko were surprised, while Fujin pretty much expected it. As soon as they entered, they got weird looks from everyone. After all, they were the only 10-year and 9-year-old genins here. The trio didn't bother looking for anyone as none of their classmates were participating. While some other Hyuga and Uchiha were participating, Hoka and Miko didn't bother looking for anyone. They just grabbed a few empty seats and sat down together. The room was very noisy, as one would expect when hundreds of teenagers and preteens were put in the same room. At the stroke of 9, a bell rang. It rang thrice, quieting the room. At that time, the door of the classroom slowly opened. Everyone's attention was drawn to the door. A sickly man walked into the room. He coughed a few times, as everyone watched with confusion. Even Fujin wondered, who is this guy? At that instant, 6 ninjas wearing Konohachinen vests entered the room carrying a lot of papers. The sickly guy coughed again and began saying, "I will be the cough proctor for the first cough phase." Everyone's eyes twitched. The genins from Konoha thought, seriously? They couldn't find anyone else. The genins from other villages wonder, is Konoha in such a dire state that they can't send someone better to hold the exam? Immediately the room was filled with genins whispering or chatting with one another. Some even mocked out loudly. At that time, the sickly guy coughed again and said, "Anyone who makes noise cough will be thrown out cough of the room." As soon as he said that, he released killing intent, targeting each and every genin in the room. That immediately quieted everyone. No one underestimated him anymore. The majority were frightened by his aura. Even Fujin, Hoka, and Miko had grim expressions. Fujin wondered, how many did he kill to develop such a killing intent? He continued, "All of you, cough, sit one on a cough bench." The entire room rearranged quietly, occupying one seat each. Since he didn't say anything regarding seating arrangements, everyone sat close to their teammates. Once everyone was seated, the genins began distributing the papers. They kept the blank side up so that the genins couldn't read the questions. The sickly guy announced once more, "Don't touch the papers. Cough at 9:15, you will cough, turn the papers over." On saying that, he coughed continuously for a minute. He then looked up and said, "Each paper has 10 cough questions. You have 5 cough minutes to answer all cough questions. To pass, all cough 3 in a squad cough need to score full." That immediately made everyone even tenser. Fujin thought, just 5 minutes? And a 100% score? The only way that would be feasible is if the questions are too easy. He however kept wondering, and so did many others. They all were wondering only one thing, what exactly is this old man up to? Something is off here. The room was completely silent, other than the proctor coughing occasionally. At 9:14, that sickly guy announced once again, "Copying is not allowed." And he began coughing non-stop once more. At 9:15, a bell rang again. Everyone immediately turned over the paper. What Fujin saw left him speechless. It wasn't just Fujin, every single of the 336 genins in that room was flabbergasted. Fujin's question paper read: Q1. 3x3 equals. Q2. 4 to 2 equals. Q3. 9x2 equals. Q4. 3 divided by 1 equals. Q5. 9 times 7 equals. Q6. 8 divided by 2 equals. Q7. 1 to 1 equals. Q8. 9x0 equals. Q9. 9 plus 9 equals. Q10. 8x4 equals. The shock left everyone stunned for a few seconds. However, soon many began answering their questions. Only a few didn't. Fujin analyzed really hard. What the fuck is this? No way the exam will be this simple. Will he play a trick at the end? Like get us too comfortable and then pull a fast one over us? He thought quickly and concluded, no, something else is off. I am feeling uneasy. He wrecked his brain hard for a couple of minutes before it finally hit him. I'm feeling uneasy. Actually, it's not just due to this paper. It's my chakra. On realizing this, he finally calmed down and closed his eyes. He observed his chakra, it was flowing very smoothly. He took a deep breath, and suddenly, disrupted his chakra entirely. With his entire chakra disrupted, he opened his eyes and looked at the question paper. Every single number had changed. Fujin immediately began sweating due to how easily he had fallen into genjutsu. He lifted his head and looked at the sickly proctor. Surprisingly, there was no sickly man at all. Instead, a tall, healthy, and handsome man with long hair stood. He looked at Fujin, smiled, and nodded. Fujin thought, Kurama Illumi. No wonder. He put his head down, and secretly disrupted his chakra again, to ensure that there wasn't any multi-layer genjutsu. He then quickly began answering the questions. Though the numbers changed, the questions were still extremely easy. While writing, he lightly kicked Hoka, who was sitting in front of him, and poured his chakra into him, disrupting his chakra. That broke the genjutsu on him. He noticed that the numbers had changed, and all his answers were wrong. He quickly changed them. While Hoka was changing his answers, Fujin turned his head and looked at Miko, who was sitting on his right. Great, she has her Sharingan activated. Miko too had noticed the genjutsu and broken it. After she was done answering, she checked Fujin and Hoka's chakra with her Sharingan. Seeing that neither was in a genjutsu, she sighed in relief. Fujin answered all his questions and then wondered, when exactly did he cast his genjutsu? He looked at Kurama Illumi and noticed that he was still coughing occasionally. Fujin smiled bitterly on understanding, his coughing is causing genjutsu to happen in this room. Maybe not just coughing, even those bell ringing cast genjutsu on us. Sound-based genjutsu, applied in very small amounts to ensure that we don't notice any sudden altercations in our chakra, and since it only changed the question paper that we never saw. We all thought that everything is real. While analyzing, Fujin realized, wait. He actually gave us many clues. His continuous coughing was suspicious. And what was the most suspicious were these questions. If the questions were difficult, I'd have never realized the genjutsu. Fujin sighed, I didn't expect to learn anything here. But this exam shows that I'm not as careful and on guard as I need to be. If this was a battlefield, I'd be long dead. By 9:20, everyone, irrespective of whether they figured out the genjutsu or not, was done answering. A few seconds before 9:20, Illumi announced in a steady and commanding tone, everyone, put your pencils down. Anyone who holds the pencil after the bell rings will be disqualified. The steadiness in his voice surprised many. Right after, the bell rang loudly. Only this time, instead of casting genjutsu, it broke the genjutsu. As soon as the genjutsu was broken, the eyes of many genins widened. They noticed that the questions changed, meaning that their answers were all wrong. Even the sickly proctor suddenly turned into a healthy guy. Some immediately began creating a ruckus, but Kurama Illumi leaked his killing intent once again. This instantly quieted down the room. Overall, only 31 genins managed to write all answers correctly. And only 8 squads had all 3 members answer correctly. Among the remaining 7 genins, one was sitting far away from his team, while the other 6 recognized the genjutsu at the last minute and couldn't communicate with their team members in time. Fujin sighed in relief, lucky that Hoka was sitting right ahead of me. Once the results were known, Kurama Illumi smiled and said, "In battle, many times the enemy will subtly cast genjutsu on you. That will result in you making one horrible move that'll put your whole squad in danger. Enemies could also use such methods to pass you misleading information. If you were to fall for it, you might put your entire village at risk. So always be careful and on guard while doing your missions. After all, one wrong move and you could be finished." While saying the last sentence, he released his killing intent once again. He then announced, "All those who failed, leave. The ones who passed, wait here. The proctor for the second exam will meet you here at 9:45. On announcing that, he disappeared. All the remaining genins disrupted their chakra out of reflex. But they couldn't see him anymore. The genins who failed left in disappointment. But irrespective of their results, all genins learned an important lesson. A/N, damn. Had to think hard and long to come up with something original here. Let me know whether you guys liked it. Chapter 80, The Chunin Exam, Second Phase. While waiting, everyone observed each other. Fujin noticed that there were 3 other teams from Konoha, 1 from Hidden Rain, 1 from Hidden Sand, and 2 from Hidden Mist. He didn't recognize any of those 21 ninjas. He wondered, isn't Kiri in the midst of a civil war? Can they still send ninjas to participate in such an event? He wondered for a bit before dismissing it, oh well, doesn't matter. Anyways, the 4th Mizukage won't show up. On remembering the 4th Mizukage, he suddenly had a hilarious thought, I wonder if Naruto's Talk no Jutsu can end genjutsu, ha ha ha. Or even better, if he used his Talk no Jutsu on someone who is controlled by genjutsu, will his Talk no Jutsu affect the one who cast the genjutsu? Seeing Fujin smile, Miko asked, why are you smiling? Fujin shook his head and answered, it's nothing, ignore it. Fujin then tried to sense the chakra levels of the remaining 21 ninjas. Soon he concluded, alright, no one seems abnormal. Only one guy from Kiri has a rather large chakra reserve. But even that is less than half of my own. Others are barely at Chunin levels. Everyone tried similarly analyzing their competitors. At 9:45, a smoke bomb exploded in the front part of the room, attracting everyone's attention. The smoke slowly began clearing out. Soon, we heard a very loud bark. When the smoke was cleared, a large dog could be seen. It was looking aggressively at the genins. However, none were intimated. Behind the dog, Tsum Inyazuka was standing. She observed the room and muttered softly, only 8 teams. I knew it was a terrible idea to make that ass a proctor. She looked at all the genins and announced loudly, I'm Tsum Inyazuka, the proctor for the second phase of the Chunin exam. Follow me and Kuromaru. All the genins followed her. She led them across Konoha, to training ground 44. She announced loudly, the second phase of your exams will be conducted in the 44th training ground. She smirked, this training ground is also known as the Forest of Death. This put the genins on alert. At the same time, they also wondered, why is she yelling all the time? She continued, before I explain to you the details and the rules of the second phase, you have to sign these consent forms. A genin asked, what are we consenting to? She grinned and replied creepily, your deaths. This unnerved the genins. She continued, death is a common occurrence in this training ground. That is why it is called the Forest of Death. You may be killed by the wild beasts in the forests, or your competitors. By signing this form, you state that you are voluntarily participating in this exam, and injuries or death caused in this training ground have nothing to do with Konoha. And Konoha won't be held responsible. A chunin under her then distributed the forms. She said, you have to enter your name, signature, and fingerprint in the form. If you are a scaredy cat, then don't sign. You and your team will be disqualified. Hearing this, some genins were excited, while some were worried. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko didn't react. Everyone signed the consent forms without much delay and submitted them. After verifying all the consent forms, Tsum began announcing the details of the exam. I'll now explain the details to you. Every team will be given a scroll. 4 teams will be given a heaven scroll, while the remaining teams will be given an earth scroll. To qualify for the next round, you will have to reach the center of this forest with both the heaven and earth scrolls. So, you will have to seize the scroll that you don't have from other squads. There is a tower at the center of this training ground. You have a 5-day time limit to collect both scrolls and enter the tower. Once you enter the tower, there will be no more fighting. If anyone leaves the training ground or enters the tower without both scrolls, you'll be disqualified. Also, all 3 members of your team need to be alive. Even if just one of your members dies, you will be disqualified. She waited for half a minute for the genins to digest the information. Then the questions began flowing. One AIM genin was the first to ask, what about the food inside the forest? We can't stay without food for 5 days. Before Tsum could answer, the Kiri genin, whose chakra level Fujin had noticed to be high, grinned and asked, can we take more than just the 2 scrolls to the tower? This made everyone look at that genin. Tsum answered, there are plenty of animals, plants, and bugs in the forest. Find and make your food. She then looked at the Kirinin, you can collect as many scrolls as you want before entering the tower. So it is possible that less than 4 teams pass. Fujin heard all the instructions and thought, same as canon. No one asked any more questions. Soon the scrolls were being handed secretly. Fujin wondered, we don't get a day's break. He looked at Hoka and said, activate your Byakugan and check the type of scroll all squads get. Hoka nodded and activated his Byakugan. Miko went to take the scroll. She received a heaven scroll. After the scrolls were distributed, Tsum once again yelled, now, a Chunin will guide your team to the gate you will enter from, follow them. 7 Chunins approached one squad each. Fujin observed the approaching Chunin. He wondered, is this Ebisu? Ebisu approached their squad and said, you three. Follow me. He turned around and began walking. The trio followed him. Fujin wondered, I guess he gets promoted sometime in the next 3 to 4 years. Anyways, there are only 8 teams. So it seems like we will be quite far away from each other. He calculated for a moment and sighed, assuming we get placed at an equal distance and cover the entire forest, then the closest one to us will be almost 8 kilometers away. Much farther than we can sense or see. Soon they reached their destination. Ebisu said, the exam will start in 7 minutes, so wait here obediently. He moved away from the trio while keeping an eye on them. Fujin asked softly, do you guys have enough weapons? Both Hoka and Miko nodded. Hoka said, yes, I brought the scroll that sensei makes us carry for C-rank missions. Miko said, same here. Fujin replied, cool, same here. What about ration bars? This time, both of them replied awkwardly. Hoka said, I only have 5. Miko said, just 4 here. Fujin analyzed, I have 25. So 34 between us. It should last us 2 days. So if we complete our exams in 2 days, we won't need to make our food. Both nodded. Miko asked, so which teams have an earth scroll? Hoka replied, the Nara Yamanaka Akimika squad, the Kiri squad of that guy who asked whether we can kill, the AIM squad, and the All Hyaga squad got earth squads. Miko thought for a bit and said, all 4 should be easy to get. Fujin and Hoka nodded. Hoka commented, I don't think any squad is as strong as us. Should we try to collect more scrolls and eliminate other teams? Miko quickly stated, yes, let's do that. It'll be fun. Fujin shook his head and said, no. While we are stronger, if we are careless, we might get injured. If that happens, other teams might get an edge over us. Another issue is that some squads might set up traps and ambushes around the tower. So we should stay in our top condition. Miko complained, come on Fujin. We can do it. Fujin sighed and said, the last round is usually a tournament between us. If we eliminate everyone, how will we show off our capabilities? That made Miko give up. Her shoulders dropped comically and she sighed, all right. They were about to discuss more when they heard the gate opening. Ebisu said, your exam has started. Go in. Chapter 81, Target located. Team Renjiro entered the Forest of Death. After going in, Miko asked, so, where should we go? Hoka replied, we moved around 8 kilometers from where we were instructed. And I noticed that the Nara Yamanaka Akimika squad wasn't approached by any Chunin instructor. So they should enter through the gate there. Let's make a move on them. Fujin replied, all right, let's go. On deciding, the 3 begin moving quickly towards the route between the spot where they had a meeting and the tower. While moving, Fujin wondered, Nara Yamanaka Akimika. The famous Inoshika-jo combo. This fight should be interesting. I should be wary of the Yamanaka though. Don't want anyone in my head. They look to be around 14 to 15 years old. So they should have been together for 2 to 3 years, meaning that their teamwork should be good. Now, how to fight? Other than sparring, in all fights that I have been in, I have fought purely to kill. And killing them would probably not be a good idea. Should I leave the fighting to these two and just provide long-range backup? He looked at Hoka and said, Hoka, the Nara are known for their intelligence. Keep activating your Byakugan occasionally to see if there are any traps. Hoka nodded. Fujin asked them, anyways, any thoughts on how to assault them? Miko and Hoka too were thinking about how to approach this fight. Miko said, these three clans are known for their teamwork. So I can put genjutsu on one of them, and completely disrupt their teamwork. As long as we can knock one member out, the other two will fall easily. Hoka replied, yes, but we shouldn't leave ourselves open to the other two while knocking one out. He frowned and continued, both the Nara clan and Yamanaka clan jutsus are annoying. Especially to a taijutsu master. Fujin and Miko both nodded. Fujin thought for a bit and said, the Yamanaka clan are known for being censors. So we may not have the surprise element. But I think the best way to start will be with the fire-wind combo jutsu from a range. It should catch them off guard even if they notice us. And if the attack causes them to split, then it'll be easier for us. Hoka nodded and said, yeah, if they split up, then I can defeat the Akimichi easily. Miko said, I can take on the Yamanaka. He won't get a chance to use his jutsus against me. Fujin replied, alright, I can take on the Nara from a distance. Hoka asked, what if they don't split up? Miko said, then we will just have to fight while keeping an eye on shadows and the Yamanaka. Should be easy for you. Fujin might have difficulty though. Fujin replied, yeah. I could just stay back and provide you long-range support. Hoka said, no point in thinking so much, let's go and fight. Miko said, yeah, no matter what, we will win easily. After saying that, both smirked and looked ahead. Meanwhile, Fujin had a deadpan expression, just because you can't think of a good strategy doesn't mean that you shouldn't think of one. While Team Renjiro was moving rapidly, the team they were moving towards was also strategizing. As soon as the exam began, they rushed around 1.5 kilometers from their location. However, instead of taking the straight route to the tower, they moved diagonally into the forest and hid there. They took a lot of care in not leaving any tracks behind. After finding a hiding location, they all hide there. Yamanaka Kaoru said, now that we are hidden, what's the plan, Minori? On hearing this, Nara Minori sighed. He looked up at the clouds wondering, why do I have to take the Chunin exams? That too for the third time. Can't I just stay a genin? Yamanaka Kaoru saw his teammate looking up at the clouds and said, well, other than sighing, do you have any other plans? Akimichi Yutaka said sorrowfully, last time we had a day's break in between the first and second phase. That's why I didn't pack any lunch. I'm already hungry. Yamanaka Kaoru saw both his teammates ignoring him and acting childish. He immediately got annoyed and yelled, enough wailing. Focus on the exam. I don't want to fail the third time. This attracted the attention of his teammates. Nara Minori sighed, if I ignore him any longer, he might take over my body and do shameful acts again. He said, this time, only 8 teams have passed into the second round. So we will likely not see any quick results. All teams are far away from each other. So finding anyone will be tough. We should wait here and set up traps. When someone finds us, we will surprise and defeat them. As there are only 4 Earth Scrolls, they will desperately look for us. Yamanaka Kaoru replied, that makes sense. However, what if someone passes the exams with an extra heaven scroll? Naraminori replied, then we will just be unlucky. Yamanaka Kaoru immediately had a deadpan expression. He made a hand seal. Naraminori immediately spoke, but if the opposite happens, then it'll give us even more opportunities. Yamanaka Kaoru said, yeah, but that's not something we can control. Naraminori replied, yeah, but we aren't exactly the strongest squad. Sure, our teamwork is good. But if we have to fight two squads one after another on neutral ground, we will lose badly. Not to mention, two squads have Hyagas. And both had their Byakugan activated when the scrolls were being distributed. So we should expect at least one of them to find us if they need Earth Scrolls. The duo kept discussing strategy, while Yutaka kept thinking about how to arrange for food. After some time, Yamanaka Kaoru suddenly stopped talking. Seeing his expression, Akimichi Yutaka asked, what happened? Yamanaka Kaoru replied, I just sensed someone sensing us. Get ready. He sat down and began sensing around him too. Unfortunately, he couldn't sense anyone. Naraminori got serious too. He didn't expect to fight someone so quickly. He asked, which squad is it? Yamanaka Kaoru replied, I can't sense them. Chapter 82, Quick Clash. Around 800 meters from their location, Fujin said, found them. That surprised Miko, already. Fujin replied, yeah, but it looks like that Yamanaka is a sensor after all. He noticed it when I sensed them. Hoka immediately activated his Byakugan, yeah, I see them too. Around 800 meters from our location. And yeah, that Yamanaka is trying to sense us too. Fujin said, but I didn't sense anyone sensing me. It looks like we are out of their range. Miko replied, that's good. It means that we have the initiative in our hands. Fujin chuckled and replied, how exactly do you plan on taking advantage from 800 meters away? That made her scowl. She began thinking and soon said, let us just wait here while he is trying to sense us. It'll exhaust him. When he stops, we can move in by flickering quickly. Fujin analyzed and said, and how can you tell when he stops sensing us? She looked at Hoka. Hoka replied, I can't tell that. I can see that he is sitting with a hand seal made. I can tell you when he stops that, but it won't be a surety that he stops sensing us. Hoka kept his Byakugan activated, while Kaoru kept trying to sense them for the next 3 minutes. Naraminori frowned, something isn't right. He looked at Kaoru and asked, are they still not in range? Kaoru shook his head. Minori then said, act like you are tired, and stop maintaining that hand seal and get up. But keep your chakra field active. Kaoru didn't reply and followed what his teammate said. Hoka suddenly said, he stopped and got up. Fujin replied, too soon. It looks like they are baiting us. However, Miko got impatient. She said, it doesn't matter, let's go. And she flickered. Both Fujin and Hoka followed her. Fujin said, prepare your jutsu. Miko began supercharging her jutsu. Fujin did as well. At around 400 meters, Fujin said, he sensed us. Miko frowned upon hearing that, and then snorted, it doesn't matter. Let's hit them with a big one. Yamanaka Kaoru said, found them. 400 meters to our south. Naraminori smirked, fell for it? They must have a Hyu. Kaoru shouted, they are coming here very quickly. And have built a Hyu. However, before he could complete it, a massive fire appeared. All three were dumbfounded. The fire was 25 meters wide and 10 meters high. It spread like a wave, and approached them at a rapid speed. Minori shouted, "Yutaka!" Akimichi Yutaka didn't need to be commanded. He immediately slammed his hands on the ground, and a dome appeared, covering all three of them. The fire passed over the dome, heating its outer cover. But it didn't damage it. The attack disabled all traps that they had set up in a short time. Hoka saw them protecting themselves with an earth dome. He made a hand sign and waited for the flames to pass. Kaoru sensed his chakras spiking and said, "One of them is preparing another jutsu." Minori thought rapidly and said, "Yutaka, make a way to exit towards the back of the dome. Be prepared to escape as soon as the fire passes." Yutaka created an exit towards the backside of the dome. They could see a huge fire and immediately felt the heat. However, Hoka also saw the exit being made. Soon, the jutsu died down and flames were carried away by the winds. All the trees in the area were burning and the fire was spreading. As soon as the fire passed through the area, Hoka flickered in front of the dome and slammed his hands on the ground. At the same time, the trio in the dome ran out of it. However, instead of the stone spears forming inside the dome, they formed right on the path they were running in. They immediately jumped. They managed to avoid lethal injuries, however, they were still slashed by the spears in many places. Especially Yutaka, who was slashed at 7 spots and had a bad injury on his foot. They finally managed to jump away from the stone spears, however, their misery wasn't over yet. When they were still in mid-air, Miko launched Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu on them. Fujin too was in a position to use wind explosion jutsus on them, but he didn't, as that might kill them. They didn't have any opportunity to dodge or defend and were hit head-on by the jutsu and fell to the ground. They were burnt. Even worse, their clothes caught fire. Even before they could extinguish the flames, they all felt a kunai placed at the back of their necks. Fujin's wind clones said, "Don't move. Give up your scroll and we will leave." Understanding the severity of the situation, Minori said, "Give it." Kaoru immediately handed the scroll. Fujin asked, "Is this scroll real?" Minori replied quickly, "It is." Fujin looked at Hoka and Miko, and they both nodded. Fujin did too, and they all flickered away. Minori, Kaoru, and Yutaka immediately doused the fire on them and ran away from the area. After moving around 500 meters west, Yutaka slammed his hand on the ground, earth release, camp jutsu. He created an underground cave, where they hid and began treating their wounds. Yutaka smiled bitterly and said, "We lost to the youngest squad." Minori sighed, "They were too swift and brutal. We didn't even have a chance to retaliate." Kaoru was depressed, "This is depressing. We lost to 10-year-old kids this time. I don't think I'll ever become a Chunin." Minori and Yutaka felt bad on seeing him. He was almost in tears. However, they knew that, with their wounds, getting 2 more scrolls would be impossible. They both decided to train seriously for the next 6 months and become Chunins. Yutaka said, "Sorry Kaoru. Next time we will train even more and become Chunins." Kaoru didn't reply. Elsewhere, Fujin, Hoka, and Miko gathered together 500 meters north of where the fight happened. Fujin said, "Well, this was easy." Miko grinned and said, "Yes, our surprise attack always works." Hoka sighed and said, "I too want to join in on your combo jutsu. It's so devastating." Fujin said, "Sadly earth and water don't mix up well with fire wind. Anyways, now that we have our scroll, let's rush to the tower. It has only been 15 minutes since the exam started. We may become the fastest squad to clear this round. Hearing this, both Miko and Hoka got excited. They both said, let's go. The trio ran at a very fast speed towards the tower. Fujin thought, there are only 6 more teams. It's unlikely that someone will go to the tower so soon. However, he was wrong. Very wrong.